Welcome everyone to another Stone Ridge Confab. Really looking forward today to going through a little bit of a different avenue than what we've tackled in the past couple of months here, which is really kind of fun because obviously we focused on a lot of the technology aspects inside of the business system space. But today, what we're going to do is we're really going to focus on more around, how you implement these systems. And joining me here today, I've got one of our key experts in obviously the Dynamics 365 area, more specifically in our customer engagement apps. Ms. Erin Kelley, do you want to give a quick introduction and background for the team and for the group?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. I'm Erin Kelley. I'm the Director of Client Growth here at Stone Ridge. I've been here for about 2.5 years, but I've been in the dynamics space for well over 25 years, just working through not only on the ERP side, but the CE side, and have experience in many, many implementations, seen good, bad, and ugly, of course, all of those and worked on the sales side as well. So excited to be here.
Well, Aaron, it's great to have you. I've been fixing some stuff in the background here as we go through, and obviously you had a big thing happen just recently. Didn't you get this new title? Is that what I'm hearing here? Or
Yeah, so we have a client growth team really that focuses with our existing customers. And so that is the group that I leave, and I'm so excited about this group. They are like top notch client partners that work with our customers, existing customers, to do strategic growth with them, to work through all of their current implementations and their new implementations. We've got account managers that help with our customers, making sure that we're up to date on licenses, we're up to date on all of our um, updates on the applications and so forth. So I'm really excited to lead the group.
Yeah, I'm excited too, Aaron. I've worked with you now for quite a couple years now. It's been a lot of fun, and I know on the pre-sales side, you came from pre-sales as well, so we get to bridge a lot of experience here today, and that's what was really fun about this as well. We're really coming in hot, so to speak, right? I kind of pinged you yesterday. I'm like, hey, let's come on over onto to Confab, and you're like, yeah, let's do this, and yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It's fun to have people on that have a lot of experience, obviously, across different facets. I mean, how long have you been in the business system space now, Karen?
So I started at Great Plains way back in the day in the late 90s. And then went in and did support. So actually, when CE was first released, I was one of the first 50 people trained on beta. So that I look much younger than I really am, let's just say.
Right, right, yeah.
So I've been kind of life to death, everything dynamic CE. So it's really been interesting to see how the product has grown and changed and evolved with the needs. And so I think that's really interesting to look at not only from a technology standpoint, but where it fits into the business landscape. So
Yeah.
as we've gone through those, eons of years there, you've seen technology explode, and especially with AI now, right? How does that fit into what we do commonly with customer engagement, CRM, what everybody else used to call it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really been interesting to see that evolution of everything. But yeah, I've been around for a while
I was gonna
on
say CRM
customer.
1.0, CRM 1.2,
Yep,
1.3,
yep,
right? All the fun versions in between. Yeah, that's
yep,
awesome.
yep.
Oh, cool. Well, I know Deb Almuth always talks great about you as well. I was trying to see if I could get Deb on here at some point. I don't know if she's in chat in the background, but we do have
Yeah.
Carly on. So Carly said excited to hear from Scott and Aaron today. So appreciate that, Carly. Yeah, we're excited to kind of dig into this. And maybe Aaron, I can just do some framing here to kind of talk through a little bit more of why we're having this session, right? Because, like you said, there's a lot of technology that's out there to address a business need. And there's just quite candidly, the thing about Confab that we always talk about is the reality of technology. And what I mean by that, just really to the point, is that we live, eat, and breathe Microsoft, but there's other solutions out there, right? And there's other concepts and ideas that we get from those products. Some would argue to say, like, for example, NetSuite really kicked off, for example, the ERP cloud services revolution, right? And CRM was a Microsoft product back in the day that really kicked off this concept of the Power Platform and all those capabilities that we have, right? So what's cool about this is that you can take all these different ideas and you can put them all together. But what it really comes down to though is that it's software, right? It's software that drives business processes, and how you implement it. There's always a different partner out there that gives you a secret sauce for it, right? And we'll talk about our secret sauce.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, you're trying to align software and reduce risk, right? When you're going through an implementation process. Is that kind of what you've seen, Aaron, as a theme as well? No matter like if we
Yeah.
talk about sure step or whatever it is, like what's your experiences around that?
So I've implemented using a lot of different methodologies.
Right?
And I've implemented more than just Microsoft, right? So I think it's interesting to take a look at like the technology. I always come back to the why. Why is important, and to making sure that we always know the why. Um, One of the things that I always say about implementations is that there's 400 ways to do everything, but business, there's two goals of a business whenever they do an implementation. It's to make more money or spend less money. Like that's it. Like it doesn't matter if it's CRM, ERP, whatever it is. Those are the two things that drive businesses. So that is kind of the ultimate why. But then you're looking at, okay, how am I supposed to make more money or spend less? What is my cost reductions,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so that's the why that we need to look at, because there's so much great technology out there. But if it's not going to do one of those two things, is it going to have value for you? And when you're spending money on implementation and working with an implementation partner, you want to make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for your buck, right? You want to make sure that you're investing in something that's going to have that return, and in one of those two areas, right? Is it going to cost me less, or is it going to make me money?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because if you think about like a lot of people, if they're technology centric with it and they focus on that, sometimes they put too much investment around it. And I've had customers come back that we have kind of they switch over to us as we call a switcher, and they say, for example, we spent so much money on this and it doesn't do what we wanted it to do. And it's because once again, they're not asking the right questions at the very beginning of the process. And that, kind of, I love how you frame that because if you think about it, like from a business perspective, like a business exists typically primarily to make profit, right? In some way, shape, or form. Like
Mhm.
we have different values, I think, that every business can incorporate to either offset that profit to be
Yep.
ethical, like all these other things, but fundamentally, like a business doesn't survive without being in the black. If it's in the red all the time, right? Like it just won't work. Even Amazon, for example, yeah, it was in the red for a long, long time, but look at it now in the black, so to speak. So I guess, the how, like you said, really matters as you kind of dig into it a little bit more. So I guess, kind of just backing up a little bit, if we think about like different business systems, so the cool thing about having you on here, because you've had different experience as well with Great Plains and other products, like when you think about it, the process doesn't really fundamentally change, right? In terms of like I remember doing open system implementations and we would go through we call it a three-step process to do it where we analyze, configure, test train deploy. Like we put that all inside of one envelope so to speak. But fundamentally that's pretty much the same with different iterative styles, waterfall approaches, mixtures of those, right? Like with agile development mixed in there. Is that kind of what
Yep.
you've seen as well, Kelly, by chance?
Yeah. So it's been interesting because um 15 years ago, maybe even longer, it was really focused on waterfall, right? Where you did all your discovery, you did these large functional design documents, right? The FDDs, the technical documents, and you really focused on that design portion and then the build portion, right? Like very, very waterfall.
Right?
Then you saw this explosion of agile, right? Where people are just boom, 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 going through it. And I think a lot of times in the last 5 years, most in the Microsoft channel, and you've seen it in some other places as well, have done this like falling agile, or all these different names that you have. But it's really that let's set the stage, get that vision created, get the high level, and then that iterative process where you're doing that analyze, create, um, and then test, right? The analyze, create, test, or design, create, test, where you do that iterative design. And I think from a business application standpoint, that especially with packaged, like app dev, when you're doing pure app dev, which sometimes Power Platform falls into,
Right,
right?
right.
You need to have a little bit more definition of what's going on and what your end goals are before you get into that. But with these packaged solutions like CE that has kind of the pre-built Power Platform of sales, service, and marketing, you can do that quick agile pieces because a lot of it is configuration you built. And even in Power Platform, some of that, if you're dealing with accounts, contacts, you can do some of that iterative design, which has really, I think, been a huge impact on professional services in general. Because when you were going in and doing pure app dev to build out a .NET, custom application, it was long, expensive. There was excessive documentation. But we've been able to, with these package solutions, I think that's changed the way we deliver because we can do it faster.
And risk, right? Like that's the thing I think of too. Like, right? Like I think
Yeah.
the back in the day it was like half of all ERP implementations failed, and
Yeah.
obviously that's kind of subjective. It's like, well, what do you mean? What's considered fail? Budget? Is it expectations? What is it? But I mean, like in our business, by incorporating some of these different types of strategies now on how to deploy, we've been able to minimize, right, that pretty substantially. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see that change.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. So I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna go through just a little bit more on kind of our implementation process. And I know we've got some audience members. If you have questions on Confab here, feel free to post them in the chat. We can interact with them and see them, and get more details, obviously, as well. So feel free to do that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually go ahead and flip on the presentation over here. And actually, before I do that, sorry. I notice my restream chat is not up, so I'm going to open that up in the background, and then we will get connected to it and also get connected here. So there we go. All right, we're good. So, one of the things I like to kind of start with here is that, this is, we're not, I, I won't want to come off as selling at all. Like, I really don't want to come off with that because I think there's so much knowledge here that, Erin, that you've kind of accumulated, that I've accumulated, that we're going to go and talk with Dustin Pagano, for example, for our F&O side of this, who's our practice delivery manager for ERP. We're going to have as well the BC side of it talk about it because even there's nuance, right, when it comes to each of those product sets.
Mhm.
But two things are kind of overarching in our process, at least. Our team philosophy and our mission, right? We're here to help clients win, and Ron always loves this through intentional leadership, thoughtful teaching, and eye-opening possibilities, right? So that,
Love it.
right, that's really like where we want to be able to help people. But if we think about our process, like when it comes to what you do, Erin, or what the delivery team does, especially on the CE side, we don't have like the three categories. We pretty much have five that we've created, and all of these help implement, right? So maybe we can talk a little bit about like
Sure.
even at the beginning of Stone Ridge, like let's compare this a little bit more. Like we've talked about like the analyze, build, and then test, train, deploy. That was really common, like you said, 10, 15 years ago. Like what even with Stone Ridge when we started, we didn't follow this process specifically with CE, right? We had other processes that we followed that were more Microsoft centric. So why is it that Stone Ridge, from your perspective, decided to go down this path of getting that alignment really here in terms of our process?
I think there's two things. And, one of the things that out of the two, one of the things I really like is in our align phase, we, in a pre sales environment, find out so much about our customers, right? Like we have discussions with them, we're starting to understand their business. And the one thing that I think we do well at Stone Ridge is really start to understand the business, which is kind of that priority. And that align phase really encompasses that. And I think that's one thing that we do that not a lot of other partners do is incorporate the pre-sales motions into our delivery process. So when you think about all the information that you're gathering in a pre-sales manner to be able to talk to the customer about what is it that your goals are, what is it that you're looking to do, what is the technology stack that you currently have, all of that gathering of information is really, really critical in that align to make sure that that goes to the delivery team, right? So I think one of the most important phases that we have is that align, because it's that bridge between sales and delivery, making sure that we have that handoff, making sure that we know all of those things that we've gathered so that we don't have to ask the same questions 3 times, right? As we go through. And so I like that align phase, and I like that we bring it into the delivery process. So there are actual handoffs that we have. There's the sales to delivery transition, right? So that we make sure that we have as much information as possible when we go into our kickoffs with our customers.
Right, let's go down the devil's advocate way. I know you're gonna love this, right? Because
Yep.
Aaron's like, no, Scott, don't go down this path,
Yep.
right? So okay, so I've gone through many pre-sales, right,
Yep.
opportunities where we get
Yep.
RFIs, requests for information, requests for proposals,
Yep.
RFPs, right? Really common in our industry. I will say, just really candidly, for anyone that's listening, that is a business leader that is looking at wanting to implement software, do that. Like I'm telling you, especially on the bigger side of it, like I guess a lot of people in our industry complain about it because it's a questionnaire, and if it's too generic, it doesn't make sense. But if you're really wanting to understand and to communicate the requirements you have as a business to a partner, you need to have some type of documentation around it, right? So whether or not you formally go through that process, or if you just do the due diligence of documenting your processes, your needs, the roles of the people that are involved with it, what they typically are tackling as that input and output, why they're doing it. Like you got to understand why you're doing these processes, so that way you can map them to the new software, right? And that's once again, like I said, I know some people are looking at me in the sales process saying, Scott, don't ever tell them to do that. But anyways, right? So,
I 100% agree,
all
Scott,
right,
by the way,
okay. I was gonna
because
say,
the more prepared you are in the buying cycle, like with all of that, the better it is. I, and this is where I get controversy as well. I like a scorecard.
right?
We're going to go in and do a demonstration. I want to know
Where are we
what my
weak and
customer
strong?
is looking for. Yeah,
Yep,
I
yep.
want to know so that I can be as prepared as possible and make sure that you're getting the information that you need, right?
Nailed it. Because there's follow-up activities that we get off of that as well, and there's
Mhm.
misunderstanding that we have as well. I mean, this is a process, right? So,
Mhm.
and that gets me to kind of my point that I'm trying to get to. My point is, like, when we think about it, like, we talk about this handoff. There's a lot of effort that can go into this beginning portion of a line in pre-sales, and then there's also the opposite. There can be very little, right? So if we start
Yes.
thinking about like industry alignment, an example would be like, let's pick on our ag industry just as a perfect example of Stoneridge and leverage. Like
Yeah.
in ag, there are requirements that are like commodity contracts, that are purchase and sales contracts. And Mr. Keith Bangasser has done a fantastic job of building that capability as well as the whole leverage team from Stoneridge as well. But what's interesting about that is that if that was a requirement that was not in the software, in the align phase, we want to get as many requirements up as front so that we can properly budget for it. But then
Mhm.
in the industry side of it, where we already have it made, it's such less of a conversation and it's such less work that needs to be done in risk. So this gets into, I think, like you're saying, Aaron, like there's going to
Mhm.
be some engagement from pre-sales with it, but almost like if you look at like the slap it in type mentality versus the tailored, like does that
Yeah.
align phase change a little bit as we go through that possibly?
That's a great point because we do some things like quick starts,
Right?
right? So there's a big momentum, I will say, to get value faster,
Yep.
right? So we actually just did for a customer, which I thought was kind of brilliant, is we did a roadmap and essentials, right? And so what we did was that roadmap process, which I know we'll talk a little bit about when we get into define, right? but we did a roadmap and then we followed it up with our essentials or quick start, which is just getting them in the application and being able to use it. And what I really like about that is that customers start to see value right away, right? And so in the align phase, it's also where we need to set the expectations, I think, and know what the expectations are. Is the expectation that they're going to get something quick and see value? And then it's what is the best value for them to get that fast, right?
Right.
So we can do something that's quick. And I think that's where the align comes in, because we don't always get the perfect handoff. I mean, it's, I would say that is maybe a 10% perfect handoff, and that's generous, I think. But I do like the fact that we have like that initial conversation. It's a warm handoff rather than cold. Even if it's not a lot about the business, right? Not a lot about the details of what their expectations are. Any of it helps. But I think we do need to work on getting the value to our customers faster.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree, and I think that has felt like it's one of the bigger shifts that we've had as an industry, where, for example, more time to value is
Yeah.
faster now compared to where it was before, and I think that that's just candidly, like, think about it. If you've done 1,000 implementations, you start to see that there's a lot of consistency on an AP or AR process or an opportunity process in DC365 sales. There's
Yep.
nuance, right? There always is nuance, but there's common tools that are typically used to address the business need, and once you know those, it makes it easier to align that faster, right?
And I think that's also where we, need to focus on the industry piece, because there's, like you said, there's tools that we have, there's ISVs, there's different things that are out there that we can help start to align on that. So sometimes we can come in, and I think this is where that thought leadership comes in, is proactively in that align phase saying, hey, so do you have this in your industry? Because this is what we've seen from other customers. Bringing in that experience of not only what we've seen from a personal standpoint, what individuals, but what Stoneridge has seen and what we know about the industry. Because really, we want to be that thought partner, right? That thought leadership partner. So we need to start that consulting process early. Do you see this? Have you seen this? Is this a problem? It's all of those types of questions to help, I think, right size what we do in the define and create.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the alignment is just a really good portion of it. So, I mean, I think as well, like, one of the feedback items I'd give would be, like, make sure you talk about really, the features or the scope, basically, the end users that are involved with it, and then also the budget. Like, I get, like, this is where it's also an interesting perspective that I'll just share it from our perspective to the audience, because obviously I want more prospects to look at this and understand, well, why do they care about a budget? Well, software like these business systems, you can do anything with them. Like, you genuine, like, you come up to me and you say, Scott, I'd like to create an automated agent now, and that takes opportunities, and when opportunities get to this certain amount of criteria, that it goes through and sends an email and then performs follow-up activities related to it. It's like, yeah, I can do that. And I feel like a bobblehead sometimes too, which is not a good feeling as well. But a lot of people are like, well, all these business systems have those as stock capabilities. And quite candidly,
Oh,
a lot of them don't, right? And they're represented as they do, but it's software. It's configuration. It's some time and labor that's usually used to be able to enable that. But the feature is there, but you got to configure it to get to that. And this configuration gray area now is becoming grayer and grayer with Power Platform and the ability to
yep,
use Power Automate and drag and drop something in there to do it. So I guess,
yep.
one of the questions I kind of have for you, Erin, would be, like, for a customer, when you don't have budget, what does that restrict for you in terms of what you can align for the value? Does that
Yeah,
impact that at all for you as you go through that process?
it does. And I have to tell this story because Jenny Har would love it.
Okay.
So, um, Jenny wanted a deck. And so she had this dream deck that she had, and it was this round, beautiful deck, had all of this bells and whistles. And she's just like, I wanted to be able to look out on my backyard, which is gorgeous. So she asked for a quote for this deck, and she gave them all her specifications. They came back with an estimate. Here is $120,000 deck. And she said, well, that's not going to work. And so it's, when you ask for the round deck, right?
Right.
You get the budget for a round deck. But if her goal was to see her backyard, she's like, what? Can I make it square? Can I do, so it's still accomplishing the same thing, just maybe slightly different. That would not cost as much as a round deck.
Right.
So that's kind of one of the things that we always talk about. But customers don't know they're asking for a round deck. Like, if, do you know what I mean? They're just
Yeah.
asking for what they've seen before, what they know, all of that, because we're the ones with the experience of, hey, wait a minute, a round deck might not be exactly what you need. Why do you need it round? Is there a reason?
Right.
So it's those questions, that's when we get into the budget conversation, because it does, the outcome is what we need to worry about. And then we can say, okay, if you have the $120,000 deck budget, great, we will make this. If you have a $50,000 or $20,000 deck budget, here's what we can do to get you still that great view of your backyard, but here's the things that we can do for that, right? And then we can look at building upon it.
You nailed
And so
it.
I think it's just really looking at making sure that is the outcome have to be this exact piece? What is the real goal? That back to that why? Why are we doing this? And what do we need out of it to make sure that we're really delivering the value of it?
Yeah, I love that analogy, and I've got some chat. Deb says, great discussion topic today, Aaron. So I'm assuming you got your friend on here supporting you as well. Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it. Jenny, yes, my deck analogy is what she says in the background. And then Leah's like, great analogy. And I once again, I mean, I think people, here's the thing I just find so wild about it. I think people are when we get into these processes, they find it to be a strategic advantage for them to withhold budgetary information in the sales process. And it's
Yeah.
like, once again, if you go in to go buy a car, like you're gonna like this is a software product that we can configure more than a car, but it's still a
Mhm.
product nonetheless. And so you need to kind of know what that baseline is to make sure you're aligned with it. I guess the key thing here is we can like we implement and scale like finance and operations or even CE. Like if we stick on the topic, like
Yeah.
we can do a $10 million CE implementation. Like there's not a doubt in my mind, right? Or we can do a $50,000 CE
Yeah.
implementation, right? So it scales right as we go through that.
Yeah. And I think some of it is that they don't want someone to come in and say, okay, you've got $100,000, you're going to use
Consume
it,
it. Yep, yeah, you
right?
nailed it, right?
And I get that. And and we can have another confab of the interesting things depending on where you are in the country, how people react to budget as well, right?
Right?
Like it's different. Like there's different sales methodologies, sales process, how you approach that in different parts of the world as well, which is kind of fun and interesting. But I think it's one, um, from a partner perspective, making sure that you're making your customer comfortable with sharing that information, knowing these are the reasons why we're asking. And and really we need, I think, early on t-shirt sizes, like what are we talking about,
Yep. Nailed it.
and so that we can start to assess what we're proposing, so that it's in alignment with what the business needs, right?
And here's what I want to say, without knowing those numbers, I can guarantee that the budget doesn't go down. Like if you start
Right.
right, you start the conversations and we're already at, okay, how fast can we go with them to get them time to
Right,
value?
right.
And then they'll say one, two, three, four, five, six, seven things, and then you're like, all right, we're going up now, type of a thing. I think customers are like, once again, prospects, like it does help. It just helps us. And kind of to your point, I mean, that's why Stone Ridge has always existed as a trusted advisor, right? Because I agree with you. I think that there's been a lot of people that have been burned by other partners in the past, where it is, oh, here's all the water that's there, let's consume it all. mean,
Yep.
candidly, like what we've changed with that with our roadmap process, and maybe we kind of get into the define with this. Like our roadmap is about aligning the business requirements over time to the budget, right? Because the budget number, like the budget, candidly, if the company's healthy and it's getting good value off of what has been implemented as an iteration one or phase zero or whatever we want to call it, so that way we've got something that they're kind of making money off of. Well, sometimes our experience has been that that budget can be more malleable because we're getting success and we're seeing better
Mhm.
value that's coming out of it. So I guess let's talk a little bit about that, Erin. So the roadmap portion of this, right? That's where we start getting more in beyond the align portion
Mhm.
into this roadmap and blueprint and all these other type of stuff. What is that kind of stuff then that a partner would talk about in these stages?
Yeah. I like the roadmap and what we, if we're separating out a roadmap from kind of the rest of create, and all it means is that we're taking a pause after we do our define or joint visioning, which is what we call it,
Yep,
right? Joint
yep.
vision. But that roadmap really gives us, let's gather all the requirements, all the whys, and let's take a look at it and what makes sense to do together, and then let's right size it. And one of the things we just did a really great one, and it's we did the roadmap and then we broke it into phases, and we're doing multiple releases. So it's bringing in a little bit of that agileness, right? So that they're seeing value right away. Because a priority for the customer was they wanted to be up and running on X right away
Yep.
within, and so we said, okay, let's do that. That's our priority. Let's get that done. Then let's build on it to deliver the other pieces that you need. And what a roadmap can do is really for your client, our client's budget cycles, right? Okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to deliver that value. It gives them that map of where we're going with this so that they can have clear sight of it. And then, things change, right? Just like when you're on a trip, right? You're driving. Remember MapQuest days where you had to like
Oh,
print it out, right?
yeah. Oh, I so remember
I,
those the pieces of paper that I went through
right?
to, and then you get lost and you're like, how do I
And
get
you're like,
back?
what do I do?
Right, right, right.
My first, so when I lived in California, one of the first things I did, I was going out there to work and work with a partner. And my dad and I drove out, and he actually bought me an atlas,
Yeah, I
right?
had one
Like
of those
way
too.
back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
And we mapped out where we were going. And what was nice about seeing it is that we could say, okay, wait a minute, here we could take a little detour, or we could go and we're going to still hook up. So that mapping is fantastic. Side note on that, unbeknownst to me as a young 20 something year old, my dad put $100 bill in the atlas and left it at my house, right? And he was just like, "Hey, have you looked in that atlas lately?" And I'm like, "Why?" So it was his nice little gesture to, this kid that's moving halfway across the country from Minnesota to California.
Yeah, keep that
Um,
$100 bill in there forever in case you broke
right?
down or something else like that, right? That's
Right?
a great idea. I'll have to do that with my daughter and my
We do,
son,
we do not put those in our roadmaps, just so
right?
you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not anymore, right? Not really. That makes sense though, because like if we just back up a little bit and talk through it just at a high level for the audience, like so there's time to value, right, that we talk about all the time. Time to value, it could be through a tailored solution, or time to value could be with a just pre-configured slap it in, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I say slap it in, and I don't mean that entirely because there's a lot of value that you can get with something like you said with a quick start, as we've called them, or a
Yeah.
rapid start, or whatever you
Yeah.
there's various terms in the industry for it. But
Mhm.
the balance would be either way you probably still want to do a roadmap exercise because you want to validate, number one, that the base capabilities are there. You want to align the business process
Yeah.
implementation timeline to when the business needs to prepare for it. You need to
Yeah.
align the external parties, your customers and your vendors that are going to be integrating with this. Like
Yeah.
it's a central nervous system kind of replacement. So while you've done your due diligence to identify your processes and capabilities of the business, and you probably had somebody that's gone through a couple ERP implementations, like you hire somebody, right?
Yep.
But they don't do this day in and day out. So they haven't done it like 30, 40 times. They may have done it like 2 or 3 times, which is great. I think it's a really
Yep.
positive thing. So then you do a blueprint and a roadmap to blueprint to identify the processes and a roadmap then to really say this is when we're going to be going live with each of these areas of the business or each of these divisions or these features are going to be involved with it. And maybe
Uh-huh.
Aaron, just to back up even more or go to a high level, the reason we kind of need that is because like in CE now, it's not just CRM. Like I think a lot of people forgot that the CRM days, they're still technically Dynamics 365 sales, right? It's still there, but it does field service now. It's a major component in project operations with the
Yep.
ERP side of the business. Like there's a much grayer line to delineate now customer engagement apps from ERP apps. They're very similar, right? So can you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that to me is just, it feels pretty big, to be honest.
Well, and everything I look at as it's a building block, right? And there's so many things specific to CE and even ERP. It's like a Lego set, right? That you're building on, and you're kind of. I need to make sure that that base and that structure is right, so that when we build on these pieces, that it functions the way it needs to, right? And so I think it's very interesting when we look at why we need to have that roadmap, change management, how we're going to work as an organization to roll these things out, how I need to prepare my team as a customer to when these things are going to be rolling out from an IT perspective. It is like you said, that central nervous system of making sure that okay, what information do I need coming and going? And then you add in things like lake houses, data lakes, fabric, all of that type of stuff. It just adds another layer in. And at Microsoft, honestly, we're kind of at an advantage because our pieces all talk together, right? You add other pieces out there that may not, that need that translator, I call it, right, to come in and talk and say, oh, this is a different language or this is a different piece, and we need to kind of, figure out. So we've got not only the technical aspects of how we make everything work, the business aspects from a change management, organization management piece, and then you're trying to marry all of that, and you have to have a plan.
Right.
Like you can't not have a plan
And
for all.
I would argue even like a lot of people say, oh, you don't need that in small and medium business. Like, no, you probably should do an ounce of prevention is going to save a lot of pain
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's not how big you are, it's the scale that you're
yeah,
implementing comparatively, right? So
yeah,
if you're,
yeah.
I would almost argue that a smaller organization has more risk in some ways than a large enterprise organization because they may not have the technical talent, they may not have the operational knowledge of what happens in a business system replacement. I think
Yep.
I've seen more failures in small and medium business than I have seen in the enterprise typically with these large systems,
Because they don't do these all the time
right?
either. This is a new process for them, and there's a lot of pitfalls. And I think that's where we need to be able to come in and say, okay, the reason we're doing this is not just so we know, but so that you know, here's where the pitfalls are.
Yep.
Let's put this map out there. I think you're right on the small and medium size, making sure that we have it. And blueprints and roadmaps, they're scalable,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
For large organizations, billions of dollars, they're going to have bigger roadmaps. But still, even in a small and mid-sized company, you need to have the map of where you're going. You can't just wander in the woods aimlessly, right? Like you need to have a little bit of that organization so that we can make sure that we're hitting those business value marks are even more important, right?
Yep, nailed it, nailed it. I just want to go through chat real quick. We got Dwayne. These are great topics. Appreciate it, Dwayne. It's fun to talk through. Carly is like, love the thinking of it's like Legos, Aaron. So you got a fan on the Lego side of this, right? And then Kevin Herman, great analogies. Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to once again distill this as much as you can, obviously, and experience-wise, make it kind of relatable. Because, like I said, we don't do this. we do this all the time. A customer doesn't do this all the time, right? So I think there's some trepidation as you get involved with it, and it's just good to understand like why do we recommend this? It's not, yeah, we want to make money.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if we make money and you don't succeed, that is bad for us, right? So that's not what we want to have happen. So I guess, I want to go through a couple more because I know time-wise we got about 10 minutes here, right, to kind of go through before we got to start wrapping up. I guess the big thing here, and I kind of just animated it really quickly here, Erin, is that when we start looking at like the create, deploy, and empower, right? One of the core concepts I think it makes sense to kind of talk about and why we do iterate now, and maybe you can incorporate this into the JPDs that we do,
Mhm.
is to take this cone of uncertainty. And I think Dustin Pagano made this slide at some point, so I want to give him credit for it. But what we're doing is at the very beginning, we have all these different requirements and all these needs and all these people that say their view is the most important view when we're going through and implementing software. And then we start talking about budget, scope, capabilities, integration with other products, like you said, in the stack, so to speak. We're trying to really reduce risk because we know as implementers that we have to do that if we're going to be successful. We can't, like, there's so many fewer big bang approaches, for example, that we're seeing inside of the industry. We're seeing more focused and then defined and then finally agreed upon so that we
Yeah.
can execute off of it. So maybe can you talk a little bit like how do we do that then in the create and deploy, especially when it comes to like CE, like field service or opportunity management and sales? Like how do we do that as part of this process?
So I think it's that code of uncertainty, and I love this because we do want to get it when we're in create to kind of that manageable risk is what I call it,
Yeah.
right? And by I'm going to give a tangible example. For instance, if we want to be able to automate an opportunity stage, I'll use CE, right? Now, there are at least 5 different ways that you can automate this. We could use some Copilot Studio pieces. We could bring AI. We can use some agents. We could use Power Automate. So we have to constantly look at what's the end goal and what do we really need out of that. That's why that cone of uncertainty is important because if we say we want to automate, we could estimate XYZ for, let's say, Copilot Studio, we're going to build a whole new agent, right? Lots different than being able to do a Power Automate to just move something forward. So really when we're getting those definitions of what does it mean to automate to this business, then we can start to clarify what that definition is, and it gives us a better idea of how we're solving that problem. So then when we get into our JPODs or joint process design sessions, and we're clarifying in that first kind of that first week of our analyze, we're saying, okay, we want to automate, and we really need to make sure that we can move from A to B in this. And then I want to see XYZ. Okay, now I know exactly what it is. So if you saw moving from stage A to B, and then you saw the information in this manner, would that work for you? Yes. We write our acceptance criteria, we say, great, and then we can go build. So it clarifies that process and it gives us a smaller starting point, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely,
Where
right.
we're not starting from all the options, we're starting from, oh, maybe there's 2 options instead of 5.
And that makes a lot of sense. And if you think about like just even further than that, like in terms of the joint process design, when we start doing this, we have an iterative life cycle that we're going through. And like on the CE side especially, like let's talk a little techie here because I think it does influence why our implementation process is kind of the way it is and why we even iterate off of it. We could use, like, if you want a notification, kind of to your point, we could use Power Automate. We could use native workflows. We could write a custom control that goes through an Azure function that then calls an AI agent. We could have Copilot used with it, right? We've got like so many different types of scenarios that we can do off of that. But what we want to do is we want to define that as much as possible, obviously, up front. And then with JPods, or joint process design, we use the acronym JPod,
Yeah.
right? It used to be IBM invented the joint application design process, which is what I used way back in the day.
Jam sessions.
Right,
Yep.
right, exactly, right. And so we changed it to process because it's not the application. Because, and here's the beautiful thing about this, Aaron. Like I gotta brag about Stone Ridge here for a second because it wasn't just my idea. It was everyone. It was a bunch of people that brought up the idea of JPods. I wish I could take full credit for it, but what happened is that we looked at process as a core differentiator with it. And I remember being at the table with Cody Marshall, Tori, Bjorklund was there as well, if I remember correctly, and we were talking about JADS and joint process. I think Tori even mentioned it. Like, we should look at a process side of it. What was interesting about that, Aaron, is that we can take that and directly apply it towards AI-centric capabilities too,
Yep.
because what
Yep.
we're doing is when we're analyzing with the joint process design, we're analyzing typically how the end user interacts with the software and what other tools they may be doing to get to that output. So Excel, for example, to take the journal entries and then import them, for example, right? So
Yep.
it's really kind of cool to see. And so I guess for JPods, like I mean, I've seen sometimes we'll iterate once or twice, but for some bigger configurations, this isn't just about writing code. This is about like making an opportunity work the way we want it to work, which might be using standard stock capabilities. Is that right?
Yep. And my favorite part of the process design piece is that last one where we have the customers in actually doing the teach back to us.
Yep.
So
See,
they have hands-on testing. They are in, getting in there right away. So JPod 1, like week 2, week 3, you're in hands-on. And they're not only is it good for adoption and training, but usability, making sure does this actually work the way you need it to work,
yeah.
right? And is it gonna, is it too many clicks? Is it, and that's the things that we're looking at. It's not just it is like you said, the process, not the application,
Yep. Yeah.
the process. Is this where you need it to be? Is this, how it needs to look? And it's simple things in CE sometimes of, oh, it needs to be on the right side and not the left side, right? Like there's little things, but those can make a huge impact,
Yep.
right? And so that's why I love that last phase of the JPods, because I think the more we get our users in and looking at it and feeling that ownership of it, the better feedback we get and making something that's actually usable for them.
Yeah, I think the big feedback I'd have for the business leaders would be in the past, you'd tell a partner, here's the functionality I want, and they'd go into the little black room box, whatever you want to call it, and then they'd pop out and you'd be like, this is not what I wanted. No, so the whole point here is that you need to learn how to drive the car. Like that is critical here. You don't just buy a car and then have a driver. Not all of us are that lucky or
Yep.
fortunate. So you got
Yep.
to learn how to drive the car. So think about a business system. You have to learn how to use it. You have to understand how it works. You have to understand the quirks of the software, just like you
Mm-hmm.
would with a car. I don't have my trunk button anymore because it's now in this menu somewhere type of a thing, right? It's
Yep.
the same exact concept here. So I love, like you said, that we've got that as part of it. And then, CRP, maybe we can talk a little bit about that because we go through and do all this wonderful creation and iterating and involving a customer. But what
Yeah.
does CRP stand for and what do we tackle there?
So a conference room pilot really is what that is. And it is a culmination of a couple of JPods, right? It could be a specific point of maybe we've got our integration complete and we want to test that out with the functionality. Maybe it's that we've got sales, but we have completed kind of that higher level, maybe epic type piece that is combining maybe JPods 1, 2, and 3, however we have them broken out. And then we're doing a CRP, a conference room pilot, to test multiple pieces of functionality. Very similar to user acceptance testing. Typically, we'll do 1 or 2 CRPs before we get to UAT for user acceptance. So we'll do a couple of conference room pilots to make sure that we're not just testing in that box, right? That we're testing the whole thing. so that we know, okay, I need to do an opportunity start to finish, starts with the lead, goes all the way through, or I need to be able to do import in my entries so that I can see how it's going to affect AP, right? Like I need to see the entire process. And so that's why it's great that we have the joint process piece. I'll hit that again, but it is that making sure that we're testing out that entire process. So doing a couple of those throughout the implementation, and then that prepares us for what we need to know going into user acceptance testing as well.
That makes sense. And some of these might be standard processes, so they go very fast through this process, but
Yep.
you want to
So,
validate it, right? You still want to
yeah.
go through it. So, and I think that that's a different, that is actually kind of different because a lot of people call that training, especially when it is just the rapid implementation, so to speak. They'll just say, we're going to train you on it.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Don't you want to make sure that the car, when you press the accelerator, moves forward?
Yep.
Like, you're
Yep.
assuming it will?
It's
Okay.
like it's like a checklist that you go through sometimes just when I remember taking my driver's test and you had to check your mirrors
Yeah,
and all of these
right,
things,
right,
right? With your car analogy, right?
right.
Making sure that you've got everything, is my seatbelt buckled. So you want to go through kind of that pre-race checklist, right? That you're going through to make sure that yes, everything, even if it is standard, just make sure that everything is what you are expecting. It's not necessarily that it's working, because it's what you are expecting, because expectations are what matter in this one.
And I think that is a beautiful point to bring up. Expectations are always different by each person, almost in any scenario. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just going to say it really candidly. There's base assumptions that you kind of incorporate into your expectations. But when you're replacing a business system, which is your central nervous system, having a checklist to go through to make sure that your assumption that you talked about in the sales process, that the pre-sales team member showed, that then you had a handoff around, that then went to now the delivery lead that's actually going through and helping you implement it, all align. Like, we're pretty good at making sure we align with all that. In certain processes, like, we can be kind of a little bit more assumptive, like an AP aging. It works kind of the same in any system, 30, 60, 90 days. But there are quirks, and different industries sometimes have some quirks with it. So I think it's a beautiful thing just to be realistic in terms of your expectations. If you assume that your expectation is that it works one way, please verify and validate that. Like, that's not me saying it to
No,
make more expense with it. It's me
no.
saying there are so many times where I find those expectations are misaligned with the reality of what the software does.
I have a short example of that. I was deploying out to a customer and they were going through the testing, and they would hit the save button and they would go, it doesn't work,
Right?
because their expectation is that when it's saved, it popped up a message that said your record has been saved, because that's what they knew. And I'm like, well, what do you mean it's not working? Like, if you close out, it's there. No, it's not working, right? It's because the expectation that the customer had was that the pop up screen would say your record saved. Whereas that was not the case. You saved it, it saved it, right? So
Hmm.
it's even those little things that you take for granted, like save, depending on what the expectation is, you want to make sure that, okay, now I know when I go forward it's not going to do that, but I have confidence that it is saving. Those
Yeah.
types of little things, just that's why I think CRPs are important. It's
Right.
little things like that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I know we're getting to time here, and I want to kind of wrap up, Aaron. So we've had a lot of good content that we've gone through and talked through. Obviously, the CRP, talking about testing, training. Obviously, we didn't get as much time around. I'll just say it's absolutely a critical component with this as well. I guess we'll probably have to do maybe even a deeper series on this. Like, we could even take each of these different phases and do an hour probably on them, right? Which
Yeah.
might be a really good thing because I think people would then be able to dive a little bit deeper. But if you think about it, like, if I gave you like a minute here, like, what would you say when it comes to, for example, how to implement? Like, how would you button it up for a business leader to kind of think about to make sure that they're doing the right steps as they go through this? And I'll give you a hint on where I'm thinking. I think the partner matters quite a bit as part of this. But where are you at in that?
I think I'll say two P's: partner and preparation,
Yeah.
right? So you do want to pick the right partner that brings that thought leadership, the experience in the specific um, applications that you're looking for, business processes that you're looking for. But I also think preparation, understanding really what your business needs are, what your goals and objectives, any documentation that you can have. One of the first things that we're going to come in and do as a partner is a day in the life. Sit down with the people that are going to be using this application, this process, and make sure that we understand what they're doing. So I would always recommend to business leaders, take a little bit of time and sit down and go through that day in the life yourself as well, to really understand like what is that bottom line that we're trying to accomplish. So I would say pick the right partner and prepare.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, Aaron. This has been a fantastic session. I've got some follow ups. Kevin said some good analogies. Kevin also said, completely agree. How to clarify, automate it could mean so many different things across companies with various technical expertise. And
Yep.
Jenny, she loves our quotes. Expectations are what matter. Love that. Thank you, Jenny. It does matter, right? So awesome. Well, I think thank you again, Aaron. Like, really honestly, it's great to have you. You've got so much experience. It's a lot of fun to talk through some of these capabilities. Even when we don't have as much prep, it makes it even better, in my opinion, because then we get to give the reality here.
Yep.
What I'm going to say here is in 2 weeks from now, obviously, we're going to go through and cover more of either on the the F1O or BC side, so very similar in content. So if you've got people that are looking at ERP implementations and they want to know the differences, for example, between an F&O and a BC implementation, that might be a good 2 sessions to kind of look at. But with that, Aaron, thank you very much, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Scott. This was a blast. Anytime I'm ready to go.
All right, sounds like a plan. I'll keep you. I'll definitely take you up on that. So, all right, everyone, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you 2 weeks from now for another confab. Have a good one. Bye.